Stephen Squibbs presents this month's board certification tip.
Hello, and our next board certified attorney hails from Jacksonville, Florida, and she works with Ashley Myers, and her name is Autumn Lee Graham. Autumn, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I am great, and I want to congratulate you on board cert and all the other cool things going on in your life. So
Thank you.
congratulations. And board cert is huge, and you did it after just being an attorney 8 years, right?
Correct. So once I was able to, I kind of started gearing up to do that.
Well, let's talk about that, and maybe our listeners can glean something that works for them based on your journey. I know your boss, and I know she's very gung-ho on board cert and the process. Was that like instrumental for you to go on this path?
It was. So Ashley Myers, she's board certified and with the Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers as well. And so she's very big into adding new lawyers and into both areas as one way to preserve the practice and to make sure that we are practicing in a way that reflects good candor and professionalism at its core. So she was instrumental in telling me that, hey, you need to do board cert, and I was like, oh, I'll just wait. And she was like, hey, you need to do your board cert. So I got the polite nudge to get it going.
So when you're in a legacy office like that, I don't know if it's more pressure or if it's more helpful to have that kind of assistance.
There's definitely pressure, but Ashley's, if anybody knows her, she's very easygoing. So her approach was, if you have to take it twice, you take it twice. If you take it once, fantastic. And so I only did take it once, but having a boss who wasn't pressuring me to just get it done, but kind of was more of ease. And, that allowed me to approach it with less stress on my brain.
So at what point did you make the commitment to do this, and what steps did you take to get ready?
Right. So before I don't recall the application deadline itself, but I know that well, as far as what point, I knew I was going to always take the board cert. So actually, probably even 5 years ago, I had printed out the application. And what I would do is every time I had a trial, I would put it in the application and I would write it down so that I don't forget it. So that way, when it did come time where I was eligible to apply for the process, that I already had my cases and names and in the big bulk stuff filled out in the application, handwritten, and I just typed it all in and updated it. So I've committed to doing this years ago, but as far as actually sitting down to take the test, I decided that I was going to do that probably about 3 months before the deadline. So accomplishing the completion of the application itself was something worth celebrating. And so once that was in, as far as a timeline of studying, I started outlining the red books in November. And then I was very lazy with it. I'd be like, okay, Saturday hits, let's try to outline. And I would not outline every topic. I would outline based on the topics that were posted on the board cert that are going to be tested. And I would add more detailed topics that I thought were going to be on the test just because they're, detailed topics, or they're topics that they have to have them there. And then when I went to the review course in January, they have a Certs and Nibbles, which is where you sit down with other people who have taken the board certification test, and they scare you into feeling as if you're not prepared. And so from that point on, then it was definitely full speed ahead and outlining all the time and studying after work and that kind of thing.
So what other materials did you use besides the red books?
Yeah, so in addition to the red books, I used what they call the green book, which you've probably heard on this video, but it's the Florida Law Weekly. They put out all the cases that have been done for the year. And sometimes you might need to reach out directly to them to get a copy of it if it's kind of like in the publishing works or something like that. But I utilized the green book. And that was really after fear from the Certs and Nibbles, because everyone was talking about this green book that I did not have. have. So I ran to go get it. Ashley actually ordered it, and it was at my office on the Monday after. So that was fantastic because I do have that support being in a legacy office.
So did the Cert nibble experience, you said it scared you. Do you think that was like necessary, or do you think maybe a little too much?
It was necessary because I think it provided you the background to understand how in depth the test was going to be. I had I'd heard the whispers, but Ashley had taken it a long time ago. We have some new board certified attorneys here in the Jacksonville area, and I'd spoken to them, and they had talked about it being in depth. So I really approached it as another bar exam. I'm licensed in Georgia, and I got that licensing after my Florida licensing. So I did that only, I think, like 4 years ago. So I kept thinking back to what did I do for that prep. And so I kind of understood that it was going to be detailed, but I hadn't kicked it into high gear the way that I had for bar study by any means. So that Certs and Nibbles was necessary to kind of say, okay, like it's time to do it.
So after you get that kick in the butt and you got like 60 days to go, what does the new regimen look like in studying and getting ready?
Yeah. So, and I did this all while 7 months pregnant, so it's completely possible for everyone. But it looked like for me after work, I would look at my materials for an hour or 2 hours. That would be like my Monday through Friday, just to make sure that I was fresh and just not reciting things. I finished my outlines. So I think going into the Certs and Nibbles, I hadn't completed all my outlines. I was very lax about it, but I made sure to finish all of those. And so I would do that on Saturdays and Sundays. So I just completely would block off the day and just get into that. And then once my outlines were completed, there were some topics that I needed to hone in on. So I did flashcards for those. So it was, I'm very big on physically writing things down and then looking at them again. So I would do a lot of physical writing instead of typing. And I wouldn't do the copy paste because it just kind of helped me. It was an extra step. So then it would be flashcards and then back to the outlines kind of through the week. And then the week before the board cert, I took off. So I didn't work that week at all. And I just started running fact patterns. So I actually went online and looked up like Barbary or like, bar exam type of prep questions that were family law related. And even though they weren't necessarily just for Florida, I needed to get familiar with typing to the speed that is necessary to be able to answer the board cert questions, because there needs to be a high typing speed and you need to put out quality. So just getting into the rhythm of typing, I would utilize other bar exams or test questions that I was able to find online and then check my answers against my outline to make sure that I was hitting the points.
Is there any way you can quantify like how many hours you set aside to study for this beast of a test?
I hate this question. And they ask this question at the Certs and Nibbles. And I hate it because it seems really daunting for people who are just now starting or wherever they read, you know, they pull up the video and they're like, oh crap, she spent blank amount of hours. But I can say that in the week leading up, it was 60 hours. I know that starting in November, it was at least probably 5 hours a week. And then I really geared it up in January. So I can't quantify it, but I know it's in those high numbers that everybody else who has quantified it is doing, because I'd gotten those high numbers at the Certs and Nibbles, and then I started freaking out and I kind of mirrored that type of commitment as well. So just in the week leading up, I know it was 60. So count back 8 weeks from that.
And now that you've passed, congratulations. Do you think all that work was necessary for you to pass?
For me, yes. And it's not because I needed to know the material, but I get anxious. And so personally, doing all of that on the front end allowed me to be very calm during the test. Do I think I needed all of that to pass the test if I didn't have anxiety? No. because a lot of it you learn through the course of your practice. If you're attending the review courses annually, if you're keeping yourself up to date on your case law and you're really committed to the practice, it's going to click. Oh, I remember I read that case, or oh, I just had that issue. I just put that in a brief. Whatever it is, it's going to click. But for me personally, when I was taking the test, I very much was like, okay, I have this. And I had complete ease, which is nice because you don't want to start your first essay and then be like, oh my God, I had no idea what that was. But each time I hit an essay, I very much knew that I had met the marks. And then I talked to somebody else who's passed and on this video after. And I was like, did you hit this? Did you hit that? And he and I both hit them all. So that kind of was that peace of mind.
So those discussions usually freak me out because that's where you realize what that was on the question. And so I would like avoid those conversations because they would mess with my confidence.
Yeah, I don't do those conversations beforehand. So I know some people, they're like, well, what about this? Did you hear about this new law? I don't do those because then I freak out beforehand. But afterwards, once it's out of my hands, then I have my, aha moment. So
did you use any study partners or any assistants besides Ashley?
So I actually didn't use Ashley for studying at all. We both we're busy. And so trying to get us both aligned at the same time is quite difficult. I kind of more so used her for hey, the motivation to get it done, and for the resource of, hey, do you think I need this green book? And her sending it that way. But as far as study partner, Jay Henderlight was kind of my go-to in that regard. And he would prepare questions. So and then he would run through some outlines as well. So he would give me the questions that he had prepared that I hadn't seen before, obviously. And then if I found a resource online, just something, some bar put on a CLE or something like that, and it was available online, I would forward it over to him, or we would kind of talk about some nuances of certain things that were catching us on the UCC JEA. But we didn't have a committed study schedule, but also in law school, I didn't study with anyone either. So I didn't go too far outside of what I know worked for me. But it was wonderful to have him as a resource to bounce ideas off and to kind of confirm my understanding of certain things that were catching me.
Yeah, that's why we do this, is because everybody's mind is so wildly different in how we learn. And it's, one person's approach is not going to necessarily work for you, but if you hear everybody's approach, you might pick up things that resonate. So thank you for participating in this great experiment.
Of course.
And the experiment is try to get the passage rate a little bit higher, because there's a lot of criticism. This year, only 9 people passed, and that the pass rate is usually under 10. Now that you've taken and passed, and you put all this work in, do you think it's a fair test?
It is a fair test. It is. The only criticism that I would have about the test is the timing aspect of it. So it is a time-sensitive test, and I can't emphasize that enough. So get with your typing skills fast. That's the only criticism, is there's simply so much information that they're seeking, and you can't complete it all in the time frame. And I'm fairly young and I'm a typer, but a lot of times the clock would end in the middle of a sentence. I think 90% of what I wanted to say was in the box, which is fantastic. But if the goal of the test is to, weed out attorneys and to make sure that we have the best attorneys practicing and a solid knowledge base is there before we, call them board certified. And so if that's the goal, then maybe a little bit more time so that people who have the knowledge base, but maybe not necessarily able to meet the time constraints, are able to kind of get that in there. But in the flip side, I guess it is, if you have to think about it too much, then you don't know it. I don't know, but we're not, the reality is, in practice, we have some time to prep for a trial. So
you have resources, as opposed to the test where you just have to know it. And
yes.
Everyone I talk to, whether they pass or not, they say the process makes them a better lawyer. So just by doing this, you're going to be a better lawyer. So there's that.
And you can educate other lawyers, and that's wonderful too, because I mean, we're only as good as our colleagues, and growing in the practice is something that is essential to our clients.
Well, now that you have overcome this ordeal, and for me, it was an ordeal because I was stressed and it was hard. And so do you have any tips that you think might help other people approaching this and taking the test?
The biggest thing is just do what you've always done. So if you're at this juncture, you've passed the bar before, so do that. Lean on your own skill set. Don't reinvent the wheel. That's kind of one of the biggest things, is don't say, oh, well, I think I'm going to try this new thing that I've never done before. Now is not really the time to do that, unless you take it and you fail, and then you need to kind of reapproach it. But definitely approach it the way that you would approach anything else, and definitely commit your time and energy to it.
So if you're going to do it, you got to dedicate some time to it.
You have to do it. If you're going to do it, you have to do it all the way.
There is no try, as your husband would say. Do or do not.
Don't try.
We're making Star Wars jokes for those not following us. Well, Autumn, thank you for your time and your wisdom. And we're very excited to see where you take this. And we'll be watching you.
All righty. Thank you for having me, Eddie. I appreciate it. Good luck to everyone.
And that wraps up this year's special for board certification. Good luck, everybody, and hopefully you find this video useful.
Brings us to the conclusion of this quarter's episode of Stevens & Stevens Family Law CLE. Remember, all proceeds from this project benefit the Center for Child Counseling. We truly appreciate your support. We will see you next quarter. Till then, do something that matters.